Hey, folks, welcome to the pre-show. We are not live on the radio station until 4 minutes and 25 seconds after the top of the hour, so this is just kind of the warm-up. I need to get a warm-up band in here, or a warm-up stand-up comedian, or a warm-up, I don't know, politician, or something, somebody to get us warmed up for the first 3.5 to 4 minutes of the show. So all I'm doing right now, coming on live, as I get set up, and we've got to connect to the stream for the radio station in about 15 seconds here. And so for those of you who might be new to the broadcast, this show starts at 4 minutes and 25 seconds after the top of the hour. That's to allow for commercial breaks over at Odyssey Radio. So here we are. We're set up. I'm going to connect the stream now over to the radio station. You hear a little feedback when I do that. That's because that's the way it works on my computer. So welcome, everybody. Who's over in the chat room so far? We got Dave Potter. Hey, Uncle Dave, how you doing? Matt Finn, Master and Commander of the chat room. Good to see you, brother. By the way, Matt Finn, I looked at that video, and several of them on the Mount, not Ebla. What's the mountain with the little tiny lead tablet that was folded with the curses? I watched that, and I had heard something about it. You refreshed my memory when you brought it up. I probably heard it from you. Very interesting, very intriguing little piece of history that was uncovered there. And we'll maybe have to talk about that. Ebal, Mount Ebal, that's it. And that's just fascinating. Like all other types of archaeological discoveries, I like things that hail to things that we know about or things that we believe. This one, if Joshua of the Old Testament, of the Exodus and the Conquest, actually built an altar there, and that's his altar. They think that might be his altar, or his is underneath that. That would be fantastic. So, hey, VJB 1976, good to see you. That's Vicky, I think, is who VJ. And sorry if I don't remember. And your picture's about this big, so I can't tell. I remember all those, or forget all those little tiny details sometimes from day to day. So, Niall Parkinson from Ireland, good to see you, brother. Romeldian from Atlantis is here. And I'm not making fun. I'm just hailing to the things you talk about, Romeldian. And who else we got in here? We got Susie Q is here, Matt Finn, VJB, Romeldian, Dave Potter. That's who's in the chat room so far, even though there are more people lined up. They're not all in the chat room. So feel free to come into the chat room if you'd like and meet some of the people here and have a good time chatting away. And the chats generally follow what we're talking about in the show. I'll forewarn you, if you're new to the show, I don't always get over to the chat if I'm talking up a storm. But that's what the after show is for, the Captain's Cabin R, which takes place after we go off air on the radio station, and on air, we'll stay on air over at YouTube and other places. We got to go dark for a minute. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with the beginning of the show.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts, of this, my show, the Intrepid radio program. There, see, I did it again. I do that every night. If you're watching on the video, I scoot up like that when I say Intrepid radio. It's just a physical habit. I don't know why I do that. There's either something psychological there or something geological or something spiritual. I don't know what it is, but you know I do that every night. So welcome to the Intrepid radio program right here on Odyssey Radio. That's ODYSY radio.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. You can catch this show, of course, in its video simulcast in 4 different locations. 3 of them on YouTube, 1 of them over on, 3 on Facebook, 1 on YouTube. And come on over to the YouTube if you want to join, subscribe to my channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can join the Intrepid family of chatters going on right now over in the chat room. So welcome to everybody tonight. I appreciate the fact that you're here. And tonight, you know me, guys, by now. After those of you who followed and listened to my shows for the last 22 years, I've been broadcasting with breaks in between, of course, on and off. But those of you who, especially in the last 3 to 4 years, have listened to the reprise of this show after John Ward and I had left it a few years back. And the Intrepid radio program, I think, has become a video diary of topics of who I am and what I'm about, the things I like, the things I dislike, my politics, which I don't try to broadcast a lot about, but you know where I stand on things. It's pretty easy to tell. But when it comes to things like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, which is the topic for tonight, these are all things, as you've heard, if you've listened to the or watched the Captain's Cabin, where Professor Bauer and Uncle Dave and I and Sarah Yusuf have all talked about these things, all different kinds of things. I struggle with that sometimes fine line between saying, I like the idea of something and I believe in something, or I have subscribed my faith to something or my belief in something that's extraordinary. Same thing with Sasquatch and Bigfoot and all of that. There is my daughter coming tripping into the show, as usual. Ellery, say hi to everybody. What do you do tomorrow morning? School. Come on, talk it up. Like, you're always loud. You're always boisterous.
School!
Well, there you go. That was a little loud. Okay, and there is Rowan as well. Guys, I am in the live show now. This is not the pre-show. So I'm going to kiss you goodnight. And you go on your way. You got to go to bed because you got to get up in the morning. You too.
I
See ya.
I don't have to get up in the morning.
Hey, come on now.
Out. Everybody, out. Same rules every night.
You let Ellery talk, but you just hate me.
Oh, I hate you. That's it. You finally caught on. We gotta have one child we hate and we don't nurture. So sorry, Rowan is it. Get, go with your mom. There you go, folks. Familial interlude number 1 for tonight. One of these days, I think in the new place, I'm going to have the room that I can lock the doors. We have, not that, some of you like the familial interludes. We're going to try to keep them to a minimum, at least the part where my children just barge in. And so I hope you're enjoying that while it exists. So anyway, I'm saying that there are things that intrigue me, that interest me, things some I have put my belief in, some I'm very skeptical of. And even the things I say I believe, I'm skeptical of those things.
Phone?
No. Good night. Time to go to bed. See ya. I'm on radio. There you go, folks. There it is. Deadbolt the doors, says Matt Finn, and soundproof the walls. Yes. We had the thing about my kids is that they're always welcome to come traipsing in and say hi, but there is a bit still of that disconnect with what is courteous to do when I'm on the radio. And so the little one especially, I don't think quite grasps the whole concept. As you can hear, the yelling's still going on upstairs. So there you go. Enjoy it while it's there, folks. It's the ambience of the Roberts house, coming to you live on radio and internet broadcasting. So back to the things I believe, the things about Bigfoot. I'm intrigued by the Bigfoot story. I hear people that brush it off too lightly, too quickly. Oh, yeah, that's just a guy in a gorilla suit. No, it's not. Come on. Some of the people I know who have some of the most skeptical minds and are very intelligent people and look to find the facts, brush off some things like the Patterson-Gimli film as a guy in a monkey suit. That's not what it is. It's been looked at too deeply, too intricately for it to be passed off that way. So when I present the things like we did last night, and which we're going to dig into a little bit more tonight, because I left off with a whole lot of that material that we didn't get to, and I've got new material on top of it. I want to present the things that intrigue me that I think might intrigue you. Am I promoting it as something that I am firmly, solidly in belief of these things? I come this short of saying yes on that because I question a lot of things. I'm very pragmatic. I want to see it, touch it, taste it, feel it, handle it, shake hands with it, talk with it, converse it, smell it. Not smell its hair in Biden-esque type of fashion, but you know what I mean. I want to experience things. I want to know things. Now, like I mentioned also the other night, one of my favorite theoretical astrophysicists, Richard Feynman, said, I don't need to know the answers to everything. He says, my only fear would be believing something was so my entire life, and then at the end, finding out that it wasn't that way at all. And he says, to doubt and question is the thing that drives me. And so I like to doubt and I like to question. Even the things that I probably have stronger belief systems in than I let on. So all of that is a caveat or an introduction to where we were last night. We were talking last night about this kind of new agey guy that said he was channeling or had spoken to Sasquatch, and he gave us all these things, and he called this the most important information ever given to mankind. Now, that was his blanket statement for this. His words with Sasquatch, the most important information ever given to mankind. And your first blush with that would be Sasquatch is delivering the most important information for mankind. I think there's probably some things that rank higher on that list of important things for mankind. But as he goes through and lists all these things in these different paragraphs, which we got about halfway through, you can say, if that is true, I'm going to sound like somebody who is trying to prove Trump did something wrong. Now, if that's true, were that true, wouldn't that be the most devastating thing that ever happened? And the same thing with this. If these things are true that he's talking about, if this was an actual conversation and actual information delivered, which we'll never know for sure, because according to him, it's like the whole, as I mentioned, Carl Sagan's purple dragon in my garage scenario. There are things that we just can't do. You have to be tuned into the frequency to be able to experience this. And it's like, well, how do you tune into that frequency? I think does believing create the tuned in frequency, or do you work to tune into the frequency so you can believe something? There's the catch on that. Matt Finn says over in the chat room, I think it was a clip from Expedition Bigfoot where they had a guy who had worked in Hollywood during the time the Patterson film was taken. Yeah. And I saw that. And of course, I've seen all the debunking of that, but they also debunked the debunking argument of the gorilla suit or the ape suit and so on. Bigfoot issue has become a political issue, which tends to water down the reality, says Niall Parkinson. I'm not so much interested in the politics of Bigfoot, but this DawaOutah LomaKatsi, also known as Sunbow Truebrother, is the one who says he's a Sasquatch elder. And he's the one that's had contact with Sasquatch and made all of these pejorative statements. We wait for some of you to awaken. We were all here together. Humanity drifted away. The galactic, like a Starfleet from Star Trek, the galactic empire, community wants to come. That's the aliens. They want to come. They seeded us. They seeded Bigfoot. They want to, but humanity is, too wrapped up in its own thing. And doing its own bad things. And so that's why we haven't been contacted. I think I left off with this one. The new uncivilization that ruled your world had been banned from the Star Council. The Star Council. See, I hear things like that and I think science fiction. I don't think, wow, this is a real thing. But then again, when it came to biblical studies, there was the Divine Council. Is it a similar type of thing? Last night we talked about, and I'm going to reiterate this tonight, perhaps there is a proto-story, a proto-religion, a proto-event that started all of this. And everything is a spin-off of the from religion to theories and so on. But he talks about giants and dragons and monsters, that they were artificially produced in species. They were used as slaves and soldiers in wars against the Star Council of Elders. And he calls it these Star Wars, interestingly enough. And those same powers serving the lower lords are still keeping this earth enslaved today, says Sasquatch. Through a combination of means, including control of the information, mind programming, staged events, and a series of advanced technologies. They want you to forget how they took over the control of your home planet and your destiny through illegitimate means and have kept your people enslaved, making you more and more depending on new technologies, so says Sasquatch. No way to verify that, no way to qualify that, no way to quantify that. But if that is indeed true, that'd be a very interesting scenario, wouldn't it? That makes sense if it's true. He goes on, Sasquatch. He says, my people is seeking those among yours who are willing and able to help us in making peace again between elder and younger brothers. Meaning the Sasquatch race was the elder brother, human race the younger brother. And in joining again together in our long-time common mission to free our home planet from the grip and grid of the lower lords. He goes on. Now who these lower lords are? It's humanity that has stepped up, and the greed and the avarice and the taking control of everything. This is what he was alluding to in some of his earlier statements. Let's see, what does Niles say here? As I said before, only Ridley Scott, an entire team of Hollywood experts, and a trapeze artist managed to replicate the original footage so that it was a real creature. Are you saying that that's what they did? I didn't see the previous comments, that it was Ridley Scott who recreated the footage from the Patterson-Gimli film, the very famous Patterson-Gimli film. Folks, if you don't know it, look at images of Sasquatch that are seared into your mind over the years. It's from that film. So Sasquatch goes on, you will realize how manipulated and controlled your people has been under the rule of the lower lords, and how what your uncivilization remembers of its history is but the last page rewritten and modified to make you forget about your true origins, your true nature, purpose, and destiny, as part of a program to keep your people domesticated like pets and enslaved like livestock in an agenda for global control and tyranny. Wow, we talk about that being like the Democratic Party nowadays. But are there elements in our society that would like to do that? Sure, to a certain degree. You could say that without getting too conspiratorial. But does this apply to Bigfoot? It's an interesting idea, but we don't know if it's true. Why does it not seem true to us? Because it is so outside what we accept to be the reality of life, of human life, of life on this planet. But if you're smart at all and have any common sense at all, we know that this galaxy, this universe, filled with billions upon billions of galaxies that house billions upon billions. I'm going to start sounding like Carl Sagan. Billions upon billions outside this small blue dot, as he said, of the billions of galaxies that have billions of solar systems. What is the likelihood that there's life elsewhere? What's the likelihood that there is a star council? What is the likelihood that there is a galactic federation out there that resembles anything like what we've made up in our science fiction stories? Is it likely? Is it spiritual? Is it physical? Don't know for sure. Well, there's no way to know. Skeptics will tell you, no, it doesn't exist, but they would love to see if it did. The best skeptics I've met, what's it? P.Z. Myers, evolutionary biologist at the University of Minnesota Fargo, or Moorhead, Minnesota. He spoke at one of our Paradigm Symposiums a few years ago. Dyed-in-the-wool atheist, crusading atheist. Crusading in that he's worked to get people like Graham Hancock removed from TED Talks and things like that. But he's a self-professed asshole. But at the same time, he agreed to come and speak to us. And he was very polite. He says, I realize I am speaking to a bunch of people who believe this stuff. And he says, I will let you know that as skeptical as I am and as atheistic as I am, I would love nothing more than to experience alien life. He says, if that's real out there and it's coming here, I want to know it and I want to experience it. So even the diehards, they want to know something. I think the large S skeptics, the big S skeptics, are the ones that are just denialists. Oh no, it's not. No. We've been through all that before. So you must drop the veil of illusion, goes on Sasquatch, that has been raised over your souls, keeping you enslaved in a system running on fear, ignorance, scarcity, materialism, competition, and conflict, serving only the control agenda of the fallen powers. It sounds so New Age to me. It's this New Age bubble of our viewpoint of the world. But now it's Sasquatch saying it. You have to be aware that there are also many lies and deceptions put out by the lower lords who try to be seen as the star elders and usurpate the title of Earth Watchers, or Hakamim. I don't know where that word comes from or what language it is. While they have fallen from their duty to become Nephilim. Oh, okay. I see. I don't know. Hakamim. The im is Hebrew, is a plurality in Hebrew. So the Hacham, I'm not sure who they are. While they've fallen from their duty to become Nephilim due to pride, arrogance, greed for power, and selfishness. They use this tactic to be perceived as saviors and gods, and they carry on their agenda for global control through a centralized tyranny of their own that they try to masquerade as the Council of Star Elders. Matt Finn says in the chat room, not entirely New Age. One could say these are the Watchers and their ancient bloodline rulers. And that's where I see the connectivity. I've written about the Watchers. I've written about the Nephilim, the Rephaim, the Moloch, the Melochim, the Nephal, the Nephalim, the Elohim. I've written about all of these things from a standpoint of saying I'm examining Judeo-Christian mythology. What is there to this? And if that is also true, it's a very similar story to what we're being told here. The situation, says Sasquatch, that your ancestors faced in the downfall of Atlantis is being replayed. Now, we covered that a bit last night, but on a much deeper scale. That may cause unreparable damages to your genetics, your evolution and destiny. If not stopped, and abort the soul evolution cosmic experiment you have been part of with global destruction and mass extinction level event as it happened in the days of Atlantis. So says Sasquatch. You must develop and adopt ways of ecological lifestyles and self-sustenance that are harmless for your environments and other life forms. Okay. Start your victory gardens in your backyard. Sustain yourself. Have you ever wondered about that? You saw some of the shortages when we were having what's the word I'm looking for? The shortages coming into the country a few months ago. We saw a grocery store, toilet paper during the COVID thing, for God's sake. What would happen if our stores ran out of toilet paper? Wow, we'd have a society on the edge, wouldn't we? And not just the edge of their toilet seat. Our total population, says Sasquatch, has been reduced to a few thousands last survivors scattered around this home planet. To this day, most of us still die to human hands rather than to natural causes. Since this world has become hostile to us, we have chosen to reproduce as little as possible for safety. Sounds like the Georgia Guidestones, says Professor Bauer. Yeah, it sure does, doesn't it? Hey, Ken Bellows. Good to see you, brother. And nice talking with you this morning on your show. And so they say we reproduce as little as possible. I have an article I had called up about a guy who says that he shot a Bigfoot. And he hunted him, stalked him, tracked him down, shot him. And he's got his body and he shows pictures of it. You can't tell by the pictures. It looks pretty good. We all know how good CGI graphics have become, CGI has become, how good costuming has become. And doesn't look much like what you'd think it would look like, but it's very interesting. He said he cried when Sasquatch died before his eyes after he stalked him and shot him. So our total population has been reduced to a few thousand, he says. Now note twice while going through this message, which is much more lengthy than this, that above paragraph I just read to you was repeated 24 times on the computer screen. That's interesting. Now, in the meanwhile, says Sasquatch, we will keep selecting some of you who can hear our call. The council, the Sasquatch elders, maybe. Dogtooth Rainbow, whatever his name is, up there. Right, some Moonbeam Bow. I can scroll back and look, but I'm not going to. You know who I'm talking about. We'll keep selecting some of you who can hear our call and come forward as ambassador to our people to interpret our message for those of your people who are ready to hear it. You know what? I would love to be an ambassador to Sasquatch. If he really exists the way I kind of hope he exists, the way I kind of semi-pseudo believe he exists, I think it would be very interesting to have an encounter like that. But like I say about ghosts, I've seen things that a lot of people haven't seen. I've had my experiences, and I base my anecdotal personal experiences really are the building blocks to the things I believe about these paranormal types of things. And as I've said about ghosts, I've never seen a physical manifestation of a ghost, although I've had all other kinds of experiences surrounding it. Been touched, pushed, had fingers run through my hair. I've talked to them. I've heard voices. I've captured images on photography. And not just pareidolia, the making up images in shapes, actual forms. And I've shown you some of those pictures. But to have one hover over my bed at night and wake me up, I'd probably pee my sheets. So, and after I got over that, I'd love to sit and have a conversation. So, still, it's very interesting, intriguing stuff. So he says, in the meantime, they're going to select some of us. I put us, I say, some humans. Now, is there a way? Sure, you can tune into that frequency. It's probably the same way you would sit and meditate and you try to tune in. Perhaps that is the way to give it a try. So we'll have to see. I might try that sometime. But apparently it's not just, I went out for 25 minutes and nothing happened. That doesn't mean a damn thing. It's got to be a concerted effort, I'm sure. Sasquatch goes on and says, my people, like all sentient beings, can feel the same emotions that your people can feel, but over different reasons, because we still hear the emotions of other living beings and of Mother Earth. We feel empathy. We can feel the joy of the butterfly and the flower, the pride of the salmon jumping the falls, the confidence of the pack of wolves, the exaltation of the soaring eagle, the serenity of the oak. And of course, those are all human phrases that human beings have ascribed to all those things. So it's interesting that Sasquatch, in passing on this greater message, uses those words. He says, but we also feel the cry of the ones in pain, dying and suffering from diseases and poisons introduced by your people and imposed on all life forms on this home planet we were given to share. Decimating species and ecosystems at a dramatic extermination rate. We hear the pains and cries when the sounds of your polluting engines tear down the natural harmony of our wilderness, or when your machinery rips apart the sacred grounds, breaks the rock, cuts the wailing trees, pierces and drills the underground. I guess they're all for Teslas too. I'm being flippant. We hear the pain of your own human people who cry in vain for help as they die in genocides, suffer or seek refuge from the evils done to them by their own human brothers. And that's been going on time immemorable. That's been going on. The history, I have said, of humanity is synonymous with the history of war, the history of subjugation, the history of oppression. And mixed in between all of that, popping out through all of them, are the artists, the musicians, the scientists, the seekers of things better. Complex mind ideologies, says Sasquatch, backed by sophisticated rhetorics, can blind the soul and silence the heart, causing much harm to natural harmony and other beings. The human people must reconnect through the intelligence of the heart with the wisdom of the soul and feel the empathy and the compassion for all. They must listen to the voices of other souls with their heart. If they do, they will, like us, hear the cries of pain and know it is so unbearable that all violence and destruction must be stopped at once. Sasquatch finalizes this by saying, if you think this is idealistic and unrealistic, ask yourself how long your uncivilization can still sustain itself with your growing populations. And then remember how long my people have been here watching over our younger brother. We hope to still share this home planet with you for many eons to come. So, what's interesting about this sounds like you could be sitting at a weekend conference under some new age guru of some type, hearing the same types of things. Can these things be said without lapsing into the new age feel of it all? John Ward and I said, we came on as Moonbeam, Stardust, Pink Shadow, and, Oak Tree, Butterfly, Rainbow, and did a whole show on New Ageism. So that's interesting to me, that all of that sounds very much like what we hear on a daily basis from certain spiritualistic type of circles on this planet. So the big question you have to ask, is that the most important message ever delivered to mankind via Sasquatch? Is this new to you? Not the Sasquatch part. Are the elements of anything that was said there, take out the star elders and the galactic council and the stuff like that, the seeding the planet. Take some of those elements out for a second. Take the philosophies presented. Are those different philosophies than we already have? Different philosophies than we've heard before? So it's interesting. Niall Parkinson says in academia, there's a phrase they use, the apparition phrase, or phase, I'm sorry. The apparition phase, which means that we haunt ourselves. There is that. Romeldian says, nope, not new to me. Not new to me either. I've heard this stuff for the last 50 years of my life. You hear it from all different kinds of circles. I have never heard it from Sasquatch, but I've heard it in a lot of different circles. And some of them are the kumbaya type circles. Some of them are the deeply spiritual circles. So I've got another article I called up here, the Sasquatch Messages to Humanity to Co-Create a New Earth, Conversation with Sasquatch Elders. I think this is a longer version of what I just went through with you. And I can post a link on this because it might be very interesting for you to read. If I here, I'm going to just post it in the chat room for now. Boom. There it is. That is a link that you can go look at to look at more of this, a little more in depth than what I even put on here. I've got experiencer stories up here of people who've seen the Sasquatch. I even found something today. Now, it's dubious when I look at it. Because it's from a rag called the Daily Star, which is a tabloid. This came out August 31st, 2021, today. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at who the Daily Star is. That was today that came up. But the story is from, I want to see if it's dated. This is August 28th. So just 2 days ago. The U.S. Army sent squads of commandos to murder Bigfoot families for tests. So there's a new Bigfoot documentary that's coming out that claims the U.S. Army once sent a crack squad of commandos deep into Ohio to kill a family of Sasquatches and bring their bodies back for testing. What do you think of that all by itself? The Daily Star. Is this just like another Inquirer type of, my baby was born with lobster claws and 5 heads, and I don't know what to do. I don't have enough memories to feed it. Is it that kind of a story? It says the U.S. Army tracked a family of Bigfoot before murdering them and taking them back to a base for examination. This is Sasquatch fanatics have claimed this. On the unofficial Bigfoot Reddit page, a site that's among the most openly deranged on the internet, one monster hunter claimed that they had heard of the claims of a new documentary, titled A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. So the documentary allegedly looked into reports that a special forces team had carried out the killing close to the Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. And the Post read, in the new Bigfoot movie, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, there's a section where they talk about the military getting involved to track Bigfoot. The guy who was blacked out for privacy in the movies, said that a special forces team tracked a family of Bigfoot and killed them because they were dangerous and took them back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, what I find interesting is you got to crack Navy SEALs or commandos, special team going out and hunting them down. Why is their success at finding Bigfoot and family units, hunting them and killing them, so much better than all these scientists who use all this equipment to try to track them down and just to find them, to see if they exist? But suddenly the commandos made it so. It happened. They made it work. And naturally, the claims drew a lot of skepticism from the famously pessimistic Sasquatch community. One said, a young lieutenant was quoted, "We can't keep the privates from telling their stripper girlfriends about an upcoming op. Do you really think they can keep their mouths shut about this?" However, there was no one veteran who claimed that it was a plausible story, says the Daily Star. They said, we worked on secret stuff in the military. A lot of stuff simply doesn't surface. So a lot of non-secret stuff never reaches the public's awareness. There's too much going on in the world for that to happen. So says this story and ends this story. Oh, wait. Another said, having grown up in that area, there was always been stupid rumors about aliens and Bigfoot and stuff at that base, the Wright-Patterson field. I guess we'll never know, except we definitely do know this didn't happen, according to that guy. Now, did it happen or did it not happen? We don't know for sure. Likely chance that it did not happen the way this story says it happened. So I've got more things out there. I brought up something here from National Geographic because I was trying to look up this thing that Sasquatch mentioned in this manifesto I read you, that there's a star council out there, that there is a galactic federation out there. This is something Rocky Stucci and I talked about on the Rocky Stucci show a few years ago. Is there a galactic federation out there? Man, that would be amazing if that existed. My initial brush with talking about a galactic federation that's out there and that's real is that it's nonsense. I don't think it exists. But why? Because we don't experience it here? Is that the only reason? I think I would have to modify it and say, all I do not possess is the proof that it exists. However, there are some that say even down to President Donald Trump was dying to release this information. And he was convinced he was not supposed to. It's interesting. I've got this Nat Geo article in front of me. And it says, how many alien civilizations are out there? It's a new galactic survey holds a clue. The Milky Way, our galaxy that we live in, is full of habitable real estate, with roughly half of all sun-like stars hosting Earth-sized worlds that could be friendly to life. What kind of life is the question? In our science fiction television shows, we show everything's kind of humanoid, walks on 2 feet. It goes along this theory of the equanimous, what's the word? The equal evolution of species throughout the universe, or at least the galaxy. So here's a good sign for alien hunters. More than 300 million worlds with similar conditions to Earth are scattered throughout the Milky Way galaxy. A new analysis concludes that roughly half of the galaxy's sun-like stars host rocky worlds in habitable zones where liquid water could pool or flow over the planet's surfaces. 300 million. Out of 300 million, do you suppose we're the only one that has life like us? Are we the only one as advanced as we are? If you say yes, it's almost like you are tacitly admitting that then Well, then it must be, the biblical story must be absolutely true, because that would be the only way you could say there's maybe only one world with one set of inhabitants. Although I think the biblical story is open for that. So this is the science result we've all been waiting for, says Natalie Batalha, B-A-T-A-L-H-A, Batalha, an astronomer with the University of California, Santa Cruz, who worked on this new study. The finding, which has been accepted for publication in the Astronomical Journal, pins down a crucial number in the Drake equation, devised by my father, Frank Drake, in 1961, she says. The equation sets up a framework for calculating the number of detectable civilizations in the Milky Way. Not just planets, but civilizations. Now, the first few variables in the formula, including the rate of sun-like star formation, the fraction of those stars with planets, and the number of habitable worlds per stellar system, are known. The number of sun-like stars with worlds similar to Earth could have been 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1,000,000. Nobody really knew, said Seth Shostak, an astronomer at the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI, Institute, who was not involved with the new study. Astronomers estimated the number of these planets using data from NASA's planet-hunting Kepler spacecraft. For 9 years, Kepler stared at the stars and watched for the brief twinkles produced when orbiting planets blot out a portion of their star's light. By the end of its mission in 2018, Kepler had spotted some 2,800 exoplanets, many of them nothing like the worlds orbiting our sun. But Kepler's primary goal was always to determine how common planets like Earth are. Earth is apparently a common type of planet out there. And you got to figure, scientifically or mathematically, I can understand that. I get that. The calculation required help from European Space Agency's Gaia spacecraft, which monitors stars across the galaxy. With Gaia's observations in hand, scientists were finally able to determine that the Milky Way is populated by hundreds of millions of Earth-sized planets orbiting sun-like stars, and that the nearest one is probably within 20 light years of our solar system. Or as Spock would have called it in Star Trek, an M-class planet. So, does this make room for a galactic empire of some kind? Or a galactic star council of some kind? Romeldian says the current civilization era on Earth is still young. But knowing that is the big question. How do we know that for sure? We don't. Some people can know it because they are tuned into that frequency. What's it take to get tuned into that frequency? There's the big questions. Hey, Ken Bellis. Ken Bellis says it could. Yeah, it definitely could. So these are the questions we ask about this. The things that were pure science fiction when I was a kid are now becoming more real, you could say. When we discover the number of galaxies that are out there, the number of 200 billion plus planets in our own galaxy, and when you exponentially do the math and say there are billions of galaxies out there, what they say in Contact, the book and the movie, the main character's father, if there's no life out there, it seems like an awful lot of wasted space. But inching closer to Contact, the Drake equation uses 7 variables to estimate the number of detectable civilizations in the Milky Way. It considers factors such as the fraction of sun-like stars with planetary systems and the number of habitable planets in each of those systems. And from there, it considers how often life evolves on worlds with the right conditions, and how often those life forms ultimately develop detectable technologies. By the way, I'm just going to get off into a mini rabbit trail that has nothing to do with this. I've said the word often twice in the last 2 sentences. It's pronounced often. The T is silent. It's not often. I learned that as early as 3rd grade English class. The T is silent. It's often. There. Now let's get back to our regularly scheduled broadcast here. From there, it considers how often life evolves on worlds with the right conditions. How often those life forms ultimately develop detectable technologies. In its original form, the equation assumes that technology-savvy aliens would evolve on planets orbiting sun-like stars. But when astronomers talk about finding these planets, everyone's really talking about the Drake equation, right? This is what Jason Wright said. He's an astronomer at Pennsylvania State University who studies potentially habitable worlds but did not participate in the new study. Quote, he says, we all have that in mind when we're doing this calculation, end quote. The Drake equation. It took more than a half a century for scientists to start pinning down how many planets could feasibly host life. The number, folks, is mind-boggling, as we've already kind of illustrated. In 1961, when I was a year old, astronomers knew of no worlds orbiting stars other than the sun. And although planetary formation theories suggested that exoplanets should be common, we didn't have any observational evidence that they existed. None whatsoever. But over the past decade now, it's become really clear that planets are extremely common, outnumbering stars in the Milky Way. On average, nearly every star is home to at least one orbiting world, if not several. And that realization was a really big step forward, Wright says. That's what told us there are many sites for life as we know it to have potentially arisen. But the next factor in the Drake equation, the number of habitable worlds per planetary system, was far trickier to calculate. And we've only got a couple of minutes left when we go off air on the radio station, but we'll continue on with the captain's cabin. We'll talk about this a little bit. So there's worlds like home. The Kepler spots faraway worlds by looking for dips in light produced as planets cross star faces and briefly blot out a fraction of the starlight. And based on how much starlight is blocked and how often, the scientists can figure out how big a planet is and how long it takes to orbit its star. So using this approach, Kepler spotted thousands of exoplanets of all sizes and orbits, but scientists' real quest was for the fraction of planets that were like home, like Earth, temperate, rocky, orbiting sun-like stars. An early estimate suggested perhaps 20% of sun-like stars hosted a world that met those criteria. And we now know that the number is closer to 50%, if not more. It's higher than I thought. I was always saying to the public in 1 in 4, 1 in 5, and this result is quite a pleasant surprise, Batala says. And so every other sun-like star is likely on average to have a potentially habitable planet. Think about that for a second. Do any of them have warp speed? Can they travel faster than the speed of light? Can they bend space? Are there wormholes? Can they travel to us? Are any of them currently traveling to us? Are those demons, as some say, aliens? It's an interesting theory. We got a little more than a minute left here before we have to sign off for the radio, but calculating the frequency of these planets came with unanticipated challenges. The stars that Kepler observed were more active than scientists had anticipated. They produced signals that could mimic or muddy the signatures of transiting planets. And the spacecraft itself was finicky. And all kinds of maneuvers. To reach their conclusion, they had to combine data from Kepler and Gaia, which is tracking and characterizing 1 billion nearby stars. They identified planets from Kepler that are between 0.5 and 1.5 of Earth's radius, which are likely to be rocky rather than grassy. Then from Gaia, they obtained the temperatures and the size of these stars, and these are the stars and the planets. And so there's so much more information here. We'll probably hit this again tomorrow night, talking about planets, galactic empires, and so on. So, for all of those of you who are here over on the radio station, stick around over on the YouTube page and join us for the Captain's Cabin. But until then, I've got to sign off for you guys. So I want to say to all of you, you know what? Thanks for being here and stick around. Live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
Of course, there's my sound. Thank you, Romeldian. And muted, Field Guy said. So I still do that from time to time. What the hell? So thank you all for being here, is all I was saying. Appreciate it. If you're sticking over from the radio broadcast, thank you. And welcome to the Captain's Cabin. If you're new here, if you're just joining the show now, welcome. You missed the show, but you're here for the after show. So thank you for being here. We may or may not go a long time tonight. No, we are not going to go a long time tonight. You know why? I don't feel like it tonight. Been doing some moving. I'm using muscles again that I haven't used in a while, for at least a year, certain ones. And so I'm a little sore. And I can share that with you here because it's just us here in the Captain's Cabin now. And so, anyway, I'm seeing some of the comments. There were some interesting comments going on during the show. I got to tell you something. The more I hear about the possibility of other life being in contact with us, the more I hear speculations or theorizations of how that other life might be something that's interdimensional, might be something spiritual, might be something this, that, or the other thing. That disappoints me a little bit, frankly, because I grew up on Star Trek and I grew up on Star Wars and things like that. I want it to be physical and in the here and the now. If there's going to be a galactic federation, let it be here now. Let it be in the real, in the dimension we're in, not a different one. That sucks as much as moving, Sean Stroik. So, anyway, that's what I want. I want it to be a real thing. Now, do I want it so much that it changes my life or the way I do things? No. I have found that there's not a whole lot I can do to advance interstellar travel. There's not a whole lot I can do to explore the universe, except perhaps, and Romeldian might agree with me on this, in my mind. Can that be? Is there a frequency you can tune into? But then does that remain a physical thing, or is it a spiritual thing, or is it something that only certain people can attain? I would like to think that there is a. I mentioned recently an old friend of mine who, about 30 years ago, had met a guy and dated a guy in Albuquerque who said that he was part of an organization that was out in the deserts around Albuquerque somewhere, and it ran 30 stories into the desert, beneath the desert floor, and all kinds of alien life from other places already here. And so that would be in the physical, in the here and the now, I would think, unless you got something crossing dimensions. Reading Rainbow taught Field Guy that I can read a book and go anywhere. You can go anywhere. Books are fun. Reading's fun. I agree. Books do take you places. That's a great topic, by the way, all by itself. I love to read. I don't have as much time to read as I'd like to, other than things that I do to study for this show or different things I'm putting together for a book. I love reading. I love good stories. I love stories that move me. And this is, this is way out of left field. This is not what we're going to talk about here. I want to show you something. Let me grab something. Now, I've talked about these books before, and I've shown them on here before. I've got this book, which was fun. I picked this up for like $6 at Barnes & Noble. Big, thick book of the whole John Carter of Mars series by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I read this to the kids a couple of years ago at bedtime, a chapter a night type of a thing. And my son Flynn really enjoyed this. And we started reading the second one. I never got very far with it. But it transports you. The story transports you. That's why I like reading Rainbow stuff, Field Guy. And I'm going to make 2 recommendations. I've made them before, but I'm going to make them again. Just because. These are some of the most recent books I've read to the kids. This book, Beyond the Bright Sea by Lauren Wolk. A very, it's got a bit of a, To Kill a Mockingbird type of a feel to it, but different, obviously. Takes place in the 1920s in the islands in Chesapeake Bay area. About an orphan raised by a guy on the beach. Here, I'm going to read. I know I've really rabbit trailed off the topic, but we'll get back to the topic a little bit. It says your 12-year-old Crow has lived her entire life on a tiny, isolated piece of the starkly beautiful Elizabeth Islands in Massachusetts. Abandoned and set adrift in a small boat when she was just hours old, Crow's only companions are Osh, the man who rescued and raised her, and Miss Maggie, her fierce and affectionate neighbor across the sandbar. Crow has always been curious about the world around her, but it isn't until the night that a mysterious fire appears across the water that the unspoken question of her own history forms in her heart. Soon, an unstoppable chain of events is triggered, leading Crow down a path of discovery and danger. Vivid and heart-wrenching, Lauren Wolk's Beyond the Bright Sea is a gorgeously crafted and tensely paced tale that explores questions of identity, belonging, and the true meaning of family. Now, and there's no political wokeness in it at all, by the way, when I mentioned that last sentence. Fantastic book. This is one of those books, when I talk about good books, this book, I remember, I was thinking of this today. I was moving something, and I saw something that triggered it. I was loading a box onto a van, and I just happened to remember that when I was reading this book, there was a section at the very end that brought tears to my eyes. It choked me up a little bit reading it. And I remember hearing Ellery say, "Why is Dad crying?" she asks Mom. And Rainey said, "Well, it's a part that really hit his heart closely." This book will do that. Books are good in that respect. See what you opened up, the can you opened up, Field Guy? And then another book by Lauren Wolk, we got this one after that one, is Wolf Hollow. And on the cover, it's got, "The year I turned 12, I learned how to lie. The year I turned 12, I learned that what I said and what I did mattered. It would not do to turn 12 without earning my keep. And by that I meant my place, my small authority, the possibility that I would amount to something. My steady life began to sprint, not only because of the war that had drawn the whole world into a stream or a screaming brawl, but also because of the dark-hearted girl who came to our hills and changed everything." So that gives you a little bit of the honesty that's written into this book. And it's I read this to the kids, and it was a very, very good book. So you open up the book club, Field Guy, yeah. So these are the types of things that I read my kids, that I like to read. Now, I read different stories than these, of course, in different books. I don't have time to read a lot of fiction. I like to read historical fiction. I like to read historical accounts that are written kind of like fiction. I love that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, Field Guy brought up something just kind of flippantly. Boo Radley, he says, was a superhero. There you go. Folks, if you don't know who Boo Radley is, you haven't read one of the best books ever written, by my estimation, as far as a novel, the great American novel goes. So, good stuff. And oh, I don't know what exactly you're talking about here. Niall Parkinson said about 5 minutes ago. He says, "Agree with you, Matthew Sainsbury. Lots of stuff going on, but these are just scouting parties, keeping an eye on us." I've heard that. Yeah, Field Guide to Kill a Mockingbird is a fantastic book. It's an amazing book. It's my favorite. Lifetime books. That's my favorite one. Barbie D belonged to a book club years ago, but had to stop. LOL, she says. Reading is healthy sometimes, says Matthew. We need to find those that speak to us. And sometimes you don't know what speaks to you until you read it. I'm surrounded by books. I have more books than I'll ever finish in my lifetime. And I still buy more books. And Rainey says, "You don't need any more books." I'm like, "Yeah, I do." I need more books. You need a library. You need enough for when the grid goes down. You need enough. What if you're the only person with a library at the end of civilization and it's rebuilding from nothing? Of course, it's fanciful, but not so out of the question nowadays. According to Sasquatch, that's coming. Hey, Samuel Timothy Coleridge. She'll look forward to listening to Intrepid. Thank you very much, Samuel. I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping into the captain's cabin. R. We always have to say R afterwards. So, Barbie D's reading one now about the Amish. See, now what, I'll tell you what I don't like reading. This isn't in response to what you just said, Barbie D. What I don't like to read, I don't like to just pick up frivolous novels and read them. Like romance novels, stuff like that. And that doesn't do much for me. I want to read something that, some of the best books I've read. I enjoyed Exodus, which, unlike what its title seems to suggest, if you don't know about this book, written by Leon Uris in probably the early 50s. But it's the story of the reestablishing of the State of Israel in 1949, the events leading up to it, fictionalized. And it was a great novel. They made a movie in, I want to say it was the late 50s, could have been the early 60s. Paul Newman, the late Paul Newman, played Ari Ben Canaan, the main character in the book. So it was a good book. But the movie didn't do justice to the book, even as old as that. It's drifted way out from the book. There are other books I've read that are great books. Another one by Leon Uris. I used to devour all of Leon Uris's books. I'd find an author that spoke to me, and I'd read everything he wrote. Trinity, which Niall, you may have heard of this book. I don't know if you have any particular feelings on it, but it was his novel about the beginnings of the Irish Republican Army. It was a fantastic book, very moving. Niall says, reading has been more important to me than food many times. And yeah, that's, I would love to have a lifestyle where I can just devour books. But that would mean something else would have to give. I would love to have more time to read books. That doesn't mean I want to be infirmed and have nothing to do but read books or any stupid thing like that. It just means I wish I had more time to read and devour books. What are some of your favorite books? I know we really went a different direction with this, but put them in the chat room there. What are some of your favorite books that you've read? I'm trying to think of some of the other ones I've read that have really moved me and meant a lot to me. I used to read Robert Ludlum. Now, when I want an action and adventure in a novel, I read the Robert Ludlum novels, The Bourne Identity, The Bourne Supremacy, all of those, the things they made the movies from. I also liked Mary Stewart's books on the Arthurian legends. The Crystal Cave, the Hollow Hills, The Last Enchantment. Still got those hardback up there. Those are older now. They came out in the late 70s, I think, early 80s, late 70s, if not sooner than that. I'd have to look again. But I love books like that. I'm just looking around my office here to see what's here. I read biographies. I read books about Bury My Hearted Wounded Knee was not a novel. It was we did our series based on that. I read a book. I see it right here. I read this little book about 20 years ago. It's called A Monk Swimming. Now, we all heard of the books that were very famous, the Irish books, Angela's Ashes, books like that, written by McCourt, Frank McCourt. Well, this is his brother, Malachi McCourt. And he wrote this. He was a humorist. He did writing for the old Tonight Show and stuff. And these guys are all, he's passed away a long time ago. But it's his memoir. A rollicking good read that, as the Irish say, would make a dead man laugh. It's a New York Times bestseller. And it says here on the back cover, Malachi McCourt, who has habitually regurgitated English in glorious colors to his fellow Irishmen and New Yorkers, here makes his vivid, whimsical, raucous, murderous joy and voice available to the rest of us in tales of riot and glory, which build on the story of McCourt's early life, so dazzlingly told in Angela's Ashes by his brother Frank. And it says, the best-selling memoir tells the story of Malachi McCourt, who left a childhood of poverty in Limerick, Ireland, heading for a promise in America, armed with savage humor and a gift for storytelling. He ran from memories of a drunken, vanished father and the humiliations of Angela, his mother. He arrived in New York, a dark, glittering place with saloons on every corner and a new story awaiting every night. Larger than life, a world-class drinker, McCourt carved out a place for himself in the saloons as the first celebrity bartender, on stage performing the works of James Joyce and Brendan Behan, and on television where the tales he spun made him a Tonight Show regular. He had money and women and eventually children of his own, and that's when he found he had not left his memories as far behind as he had thought. From the notorious Tombs prison in New York City to poolside arrests in Beverly Hills, in the company of the gold smugglers in Zurich and whores in Calcutta, from Paris to Rome and to Limerick once more, McCourt fled again until he had no choice but to stop and turn and face his past. Darkly funny, shockingly raw, and everywhere making the English language do tricks the British never intended, Malachi McCourt, a true original, tells his story with passion, wit, irreverence, and charm. A Monk Swimming is his book, and I really enjoyed this book. It evoked in me such ethos, such empathetic ethos, that just reading the description on the back of this cover makes me almost want to tear up for remembering what some of the things in this book said. And there's a piece I want to read, and I think I've done this on my show before. This is not unethical, but perhaps a little bit out of the ordinary. But I want to read you the last 2 pages of this book, A Monk Swimming. This is how he ends his book. Now, remember, his book, he talked about his alcoholic father and the troubles with his father, the troubles with his mother, and all the things that sent him to America as a young man. I'm reading what Niall says in the chat room. You know, I'm very contemporary with novels. I love post-horror novels, which are novels which delve the horrors we've created for ourselves. You know, I understand that. Let me read this to you. And I will do my best. I approach it with a bit of trepidation because I already feel emotion welling up over what this book did for me. But this is the last 2 pages. This is after telling the story of his life and of his father's death, the alcoholism, all of this, the dire times it brought back. But this is the last 2 pages. He says this. And by the way, the last 2 pages are in italicized type here. So it's it's like an afterthought of the book. He ends the body of the book. It says, his mother says, I should have known better. she said. That should be on her gravestone, says Malachi. The mother went to her once more manless bed, thinking the Irish proverb, it's all better than a bad marriage. I stretched out on the lumpy dark couch and went to sleep, dreaming dreams that are not in my memory. And then he goes with this last 2 pages, which read like this. The early summer day, when he took me by the hand to go for the walk, I was eager, because he rarely held our hand or carried anything in his own, as he believed it was unseemly for a man to care for a child or carry a parcel in his hands. Woman's work, says he. We walked out by the way of Ross Bryan, past the white gates of the railway, past the small houses the English build for railway workers. He told me we were going to a place where there is a well that has the sweetest, coolest, magical spring waters, which are there to make you happy. I just couldn't get over how much I loved my daddy then, for bringing me to this sacred, secret place. We clambered over one stile and crossed a field that had cows who looked at me and frightened me, but big brave father chased them off with a wave of his hand. Over a ditch we went with him, me carried above the clumps of stinging nettles, which he said were good for you when brewed as tea. We walked to the middle of the field, and there, midst a clump of rushes, was the well. It didn't look to me like it was too magical, as it was just water surrounded by some built-up stones. Kneel down and drink it, he said, and I did. I tried to remember something I'd read in a Bible about soldiers being selected for battle by Moses, and whether they cupped their hands and drank the water, or was it that they put their mouths in the water and sucked it up. I thought it was braver to put my mouth in the water and suck it up. It was the loveliest water I'd ever tasted. And the more I drank of it, the lovelier it became. And when we lay under the big shady tree, which was the home of dozens of birds, and my father made up stories of bravery and dying for Ireland, and he sang many songs and recited poetry and manufactured tales of the doings of the shapes in the clouds. The trees, or the bees hummed, the birds sang, and the insects cricketed all around as he talked, crooned, and made use of the language to fill a child's mind with joy and wonder. The marvelous sun began its descent in the sky, and all around us the natives of nature began the rustling and settling for the evening's rest. My dad told me that all creatures had one thing in common. They all knew how to pray. That's what they were doing now, thanking God for another blessed and wonderful day. And we should go now and leave them to their devotions. The darkness was falling as we walked back along the road to the fetid lane, and there were scary moos and raws or caws, and the screeches from the field on either side of us. But my dad picked me up and held me close, and I wasn't afraid anymore. And I fell asleep and didn't wake till the next morning. When my father left us and went to England, I went to find the well again. Over the same stile I went, over the same ditch where the stinging nettles threatened, past the big sheltering tree to where the well had been. It wasn't there. No rushes, no well. I tramped all over that field, and the field to the south of it, and to the north of it, and every other field. But never again did I find that well. And never again did I find the father who brought me there. That is a book I would recommend. A Monk Swimming by Malachi McCourt. There you go, field guy. That's our book club for tonight. Yeah, Little Boy's Remembrance, Barbie D. So, yeah, very powerful ending to a book, I think. And I hope I haven't ruined that. I haven't ruined that book for you. That's just the way he ends it. Niall Parkinson says, my point exactly. We need look no further for trauma than what you just read. There's nothing more there than the yearnings of a child and its betrayal. Classic novels are always based on betrayal. Yeah, you're right. You're right. In one respect or another. So there you go. Ah. And you know what? That's going to be the captain's cabin for tonight. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for coming to the show, listening to the show tonight. Thank you for giving me your time and being part of this. Live long and prosper.